Fox News Radio, I'm Kathleen Maloney. We will soon know the winner of today's Democratic primary. Fox News Radio's Eben Brown joins us live.
Kathleen, polling places in South Carolina are shutting their doors. The only exception are the people already in line. They'll get the chance to vote either for Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders in today's Democratic primary.
And I'm voting for Hillary because I think she will continue the President Obama's legacy. And Bernie, I like Bernie Sanders, but I just don't know Bernie. And that's the only thing.
Sanders campaigned in Texas earlier today, one of the big prizes on this week's Super Tuesday contest. Clinton has been stumping, however, in the Palmetto State, Kathleen.
Thanks, Eben. In the GOP presidential race, Marco Rubio stepping up the pressure on Donald Trump, releasing 5 years' worth of tax returns from 2010 to 2014. They show he and wife Jeanette paid more than $500,000 taxes on about $2.3 million. Earlier, Rubio saying he's trying to expose the real Donald Trump.
The majority of Republican voters do not want Donald Trump to be our nominee, and they are going to support whoever is left standing that is fighting against him to ensure that we do not nominate a con artist.
Rubio talking to reporters in Georgia, the frontrunner in Arkansas, urging people to turn out on Super Tuesday.
I don't want your money. I don't need your money. I don't want it. I want you to go out and vote on Tuesday and just knock them dead. And let's go. Let's create a mandate.
Trump campaigning with New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who has endorsed him. Violence at a KKK anti-immigration rally in Southern California. A KKK leader claiming his members defended themselves when counter-protesters attacked them. Police say 3 of the protesters were stabbed, one in critical condition. You're listening to Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. So, who's going to do what? Flashlights?
Nowhere to be found.
Where to be found? Batteries?
Dead.
Great. Emergency supply kits?
Not packed.
What about blankets?
We have an old towel.
Good enough. Cell phones?
May not work.
Emergency water?
Not a drop.
And what about food?
Nope.
Perfect. We all know where we're meeting if we're separated, yeah?
The library. Aunt Joan's house. The bus stop.
Great. And I'll be waiting here wondering where you all are. Sounds like we don't have a plan. Who's up for mini golf?
Winging it is not an emergency plan. Make sure your kids know what to do during an emergency. Who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information. A public service announcement brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
A trip to the hospital for John Lennon's widow, Yoko Ono.
A fire department ambulance called to Ono's apartment at 9 p.m. Friday. Her publicist insisting it was nothing. The 83-year-old was hospitalized for flu-like symptoms. Son Sean Lennon tweeting that his mother was dehydrated and tired, also denying reports she suffered a stroke, and that the only stroke Yoko Ono had was a stroke of genius. Also thanking people for their well wishes. Jane Metzler, Fox News.
Terrorism and suspected terrorists, the focus of weekly addresses.
The fight against ISIS, one of the topics of this week's address by President Obama.
This fight against ISIL will remain difficult, but we will continue to draw on all elements of our national power, including the strength of our communities and our values as Americans.
The Republican address arguing against President Obama's plan to shut down Guantanamo Bay before he leaves office.
The president says Guantanamo Bay makes us less safe because terrorists use it as a propaganda tool. But terrorists use just about any type of military response as a propaganda tool.
Indiana Congresswoman Jackie Walorski says the plan is just a distraction to the president's failure to eliminate ISIS. Joe Chiro, Fox News.
The small town of Heston, Kansas, still reeling from a shooting at the XL Industries lawnmower factory, where 3 people were killed, 14 injured.
We begin transition from the investigative piece of this, which is currently ongoing and will be for some time. But now we take the community and those impacted by it to another dimension of this, and that's how do we heal.
Heston City Administrator Gary Emery, the gunman, Cedric Ford, was killed by police, and police say he was a felon armed with an assault rifle and a handgun. An FBI investigation continuing. I'm Kathleen Maloney, Fox News Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that worked out well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Whitfield Analysis. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live on NGC1 here in southern Florida. For some reason, the audio wasn't kicking in there for a sec, but we have that all fixed. Anyway, welcome to the show. Telephone number, as always, if you want to call and leave a voicemail for the show, 941-564-5805. You can follow me on Twitter at SMW_NGC, hashtag WA Radio Show. The website is thesamwhitfield.com, where you can read blog posts, get show notes, and so much more. And you can also check out my columns on redmillennial.com. I want to plug the fine folks over at Red Millennial because they've given me a wonderful platform to write with. So I always want to extend a compliment to those who help me out. So I really appreciate all they do. And I also want to mention, too, that you can join us in the Spreaker chat room by logging on live. If you follow the links on my social media, you should be able to listen to the show live. If you have a Spreaker account, you can log in and become a member of our chat. So right now we have Zach Angel, Zach from Philly, as I like to call him, and he is one of our regular chatters. Occasionally Eric will pop in here too. Sometimes Barbara, and sometimes Michael Housen. Those are kind of the main stars of our chat room. But I encourage you all to join the chat room, as we don't have any phone lines for this radio show. And yeah, the chat room is the easiest way to get into contact with me live during the show. I don't check Twitter, I don't check Facebook during the show. I've tried doing that before, and it just gets to be too hectic. So if you want to reach me, the chat room is the best bet during the show. Alright, folks. So last night I talked a lot about how Marco Rubio just kicked the crap out of Donald Trump on Thursday night's debate, and it is true that Rubio did a masterful job of taking Trump down a few notches. In fact, if you were listening to the Fox News radio update that played before the show began, you heard it mentioned that Rubio is now surging in certain polls, even ahead of Trump. That's great news for me as a Rubio fan, but Trump is still ahead in the primaries. And listen, folks, I've come to a reality, which is the fact of the matter is Donald Trump may very well be the nominee. And if that's the case, here's the point I want to make to you tonight. No matter who the candidate is in the general election, we need to support whoever he may be, because if we don't, Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders will win and continue to screw things up. We cannot take another term of left-wing progressivism. I'm not even sure progressive is the correct term to describe what Hillary Clinton is. She's so left-wing that she might as well be a fascist or even a socialist. But I've been noticing a lot of rhetoric on Facebook, and I know I've talked about this before, but honestly, folks, the Republican Party is starting to drive me insane. Because on one side, you seem to have people understand how elections work, and there are people like me, and Zach, and Leo Stratton, and a couple of other people who understand that in order to win elections, the constituency of a given party, whether that be Republican or Democrat, must show up 100% to the polls on election day in order to vote for their candidate and get a victory. That's how landslides are won. On the other hand, and unfortunately this seems to be becoming the popular thing to do now, whether it be Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or whoever it may be, people are so stuck to their candidates now that they don't seem to want to concede that if their candidate drops out of the race, they're going to have to still support another given candidate. I'll give you a perfect example. Leo Stratton, who's been a guest on this program before, he helps Dan Sandini over at DaylightDisinfectant.com. They're both video journalists. Leo posted something on Facebook, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but I'm going to pull it up here in a sec. Leo wrote an interesting post, which really, I think, really kind of summarizes this whole issue with unity within the Republican Party. Okay, Leo wrote this morning, if I can find it, Leah wrote about 7 hours ago today. Yeah, this is why it's taking me a while to find it. Okay, I found it. So Leah wrote today earlier on Facebook, "A little reality to Trump haters. I am not a Trump fan. I am a realist. 2017 to 2025. President Hillary Clinton. VP Harry Reid. Secretary of State Nancy Pelosi. Secretary of Defense Barbara Boxer. Attorney General Lois Lerner. In 2017 to lifetime, Supreme Court appointee Barack H. Obama. Scares the shit out of me. You?" So what Leo is saying, ladies and gentlemen, in this post that he wrote this morning, he's essentially laying out what will happen if Hillary Clinton wins the presidency. And throughout all these posts, I'm not going to read through every one of the posts, but there seems to be a pushback on Leo's post, primarily saying that if we vote for Trump, or if we vote for Trump, then we're compromising our values as conservatives, and we can't do that because we need to stand strong by our values, and there's no way we can compromise. That's basically the gist of a couple of the retorts against Leo's posts. And it's a retort that I myself have been receiving quite a lot lately in regards to Donald Trump and in regards to the election. Okay, I'm not a Trump fan either. But regular fans of the program and regular readers of my columns will also know I wrote an article a couple months back basically laying out this whole their scenario. You can find it at thesamwhitfield.com. It's titled conservatives need to learn how to win political chess. That's not the exact title, but essentially the article is how right now, folks, the Republican Party sucks at playing chess because we're so divided between the evangelical and religious right, the secular right, the gay sect of the conservative movement. We're so segregated kind of within our party. We have the Tea Party, we have the moderates, we have the libertarians. We all kind of like to huddle within our own little groups, but when it comes to election time, that's not going to do us much good because on election day, we need to huddle together and ally ourselves and really pull our forces together. And right now, with all this infighting of people saying, no, I'm not going to support Trump, or no, I'm not going to support Marco Rubio, or no, I'm not going to support Ted Cruz if any one of these guys is the nominee, we're not going to win unless we all band together and vote for the said candidate. We don't have that luxury. And I've been saying this since 2014, ladies and gentlemen. And a bunch of you were saying, oh, Sam, you don't need to be, talking about that right now. 2016 is, still way off in the distance, and we have time, and we'll get a candidate that is so good and that we can all agree on that you don't need to worry about that. That's what a couple people said to me. Well, 2016 has officially come. We are nearing the end of February. We are going into March. And right now, the Republican Party is more splintered than ever. We have the Cruz supporters who seem to have this notion that if Ted Cruz doesn't win the election, America is doomed and we're all going to die. A sentiment, by the way, which has primarily been promoted by Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck endorsed Ted Cruz about a month or so ago now on his radio show, and since then he's more or less had this mentality that Ted Cruz is the only one who can save the country. It can't be Donald, because Donald is a left-winger, which Trump is a left-winger, but we'll get to that in a sec. And Marco Rubio's too soft, so, unless it's Ted Cruz, we're heading, towards the apocalypse, folks. And, because, no, Marco won't be able to save anything, and neither will Trump. So that is the narrative that a lot of Glenn Beck supporters are using to try and get support behind Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz is mainly using fear to try and get people to vote for him. He's also been saying that he is the only candidate who has stood toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. Ted, a couple months ago, weren't you, shaking hands with Donald Trump? I'm pretty sure that, I saw photos of you, shaking hands and, at one point, even hugging Donald Trump. In fact, to the Trump supporters out there, I'm pretty sure I can find photos from some of you guys suggesting a Trump Cruz ticket, where Trump is the president and Cruz is the vice president. Those photos do exist out there, and if I were so inclined, I could dig back really far on Facebook and find those, but I don't have time to do that right now since I'm on air. So Ted Cruz, I would vote for him if he's the nominee, but at this point I don't think fear-mongering is the best option. Then we have Marco Rubio, who admittedly I'm a little biased towards because I've endorsed him, but I will concede the point that Rubio is weak on immigration, okay? He hasn't done the best as far as immigration policy goes. The Gang of Eight is a major blister on his record, and it's one that is unfortunately not going to go away anytime soon, and I think Rubio supporters, including myself, have to swallow that pill. However, and here's the caveat, here's my caveat with Rubio. What other issues is he weak on? Because it seems to me like, you know, a lot of these Trump and Cruz supporters love to claim that Rubio isn't actually a conservative, or he's a weak conservative because of his policy on immigration. And I'm like, okay, so Rubio might be weak on immigration, but where else has he faltered in terms of conservative values? He and Ted Cruz both have an A+ rating from the American Conservative Union. Okay? For someone to say that Marco Rubio is not a conservative based on the sole issue of immigration, well, you're grasping at straws if you're part of that group. And by the way, if we're only judging candidates on one single issue in the Republican Party, whether that be immigration or gay marriage or the economy or national security, if we're judging a candidate based on the fact that they've stumbled and faltered on one issue, like people have flipped out with Marco Rubio, then we have a major problem, because no candidate is going to be completely 100% conservative ever. No one is going to appeal to the entire spectrum of conservatism. No one. So, Rubio, in my opinion, is the best choice because he is the most likable, he is the most eloquent, and he's the most polished when it comes to ideology. Now, when it comes to Donald Trump, I've pretty much outlined why I don't think Donald Trump is a good candidate. You know, people think he's a tough guy, people think he's, you know, a strong arm and that he avoids political correctness. And I've said before, I admire Donald Trump for the way he combats political correctness. I think the fact that he has taken on political correctness in the way he has clearly demonstrates that people are pissed off at the PC Gestapo. And obviously people want to get rid of political correctness. However, in terms of policy and whatnot, Trump changes his opinion about every 5 seconds. 1 minute he's pro-abortion, the next minute he's anti-abortion. 1 minute he's criticizing Pamela Geller for hosting a rally condemning Islamic terrorism and drawing pictures of Mohammed. Okay, Donald Trump, if you can remember, he actually condemned Pamela Geller for that. Then, just a couple of short months later, he's saying that he wants to unilaterally ban Muslims from the United States of America. So this guy flip-flops every 10 seconds on several issues, and Ben Shapiro over at DailyWire.com, Ben Shapiro was also a guest on this program several years ago, back when we were still on Blog Talk Radio. Ben Shapiro pretty much illustrates in this latest video from Daily Wire why Trump is not only a conservative, but is the epitome of a liberal. So this is a brand new tape that's out at Daily Wire, and I want to play it for you now and analyze it. Cut number 1, go.
Donald Trump is fun to watch. He bashes the establishment, and they totally deserve it. He's the biggest man in the race. He's the roughest, toughest bastard out there, and he tells it just like it is. Except he doesn't, because as entertaining as Donald Trump is a liar. Who does he lie to? First, evangelicals. Trump says he loves the evangelicals, that the Bible is his favorite book. It's even better than Art of the Deal. Forget the fact Trump couldn't even name his favorite Bible verse. Focus in on the fact that Trump said he never asks for God's forgiveness. Here are just some of the things Trump isn't repenting for. Bragging about his, quote, experiences with women, often seemingly very happily married and important women. Cheating on his first wife, Ivana, after considering asking her for an open marriage. Supporting partial birth abortion until about 5 minutes ago. Refusing to label abortion murder and stating that Planned Parenthood does terrific work. Writing, quote, oftentimes, when I was sleeping with one of the top women in the world, I would say to myself, thinking about me as a boy from Queens, can you believe what I am getting? Saying, quote, you know, it doesn't really matter what they write as long as you've got a young and a beautiful piece of ass. Stating, quote, if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. Telling a friend, according to New York Magazine, quote, you have to treat women like opposing a constitutional amendment to end same-sex marriage, saying he won't take moral sides between Israel and the Palestinians. And, of course, Trump-branded casinos actually contain strip clubs, all of which begs the question, have evangelicals ever supported an unrepentant, pro-Planned Parenthood, adulterous strip club owner before? Next, conservatives. Trump hasn't been consistently conservative on a single policy position in his entire career. He may be talking conservative policy now, but what reason do you have to trust him? Trump says now he's the most hardcore candidate on immigration, but in 2012, he criticized Mitt Romney for being too harsh on illegal immigration. Mitt Romney. Trump also hired illegals at his golf courses and to build his famous Trump Tower. Trump says now he'd ban Muslim immigration to the United States, but he originally said he would take in Syrian refugees. Trump is super pro-Second Amendment now, but back in 2000, he supported the assault weapons ban. Trump says he isn't for Obamacare, but then he repeatedly and consistently praises the socialist British and Canadian and Scottish healthcare systems. Trump supported Obama's stimulus package and TARP and the auto bailouts. He backs campaign finance reform. He says the government should cap executive pay. Trump boasts that he often bribed public officials, but he wants you to believe he'll be the one to stop cronyism. Trump says he'll appoint great justices, but he named his pro-partial birth abortion sister as a possible nominee. Trump only stopped giving money to Democrats in 2011, 3 years into the Obama administration, just about the time he was starting to talk about running for president. Between 1989 and 2010, Trump gave more money to Democrats than Republicans. He gave money to John Kerry and Teddy Kennedy and Harry Reid and, yes, Hillary Clinton. And just 2 weeks ago, Trump said, quote, I'm very capable of changing to anything I want to change to. Is this someone conservatives should trust? Finally, Trump's lying to the we want a winner folks. Trump says he wins, and he wins, and he wins. He's a great businessman, a magnificent success. Here is a quick list of Trump's business failures. Trump the game, Trump vodka, Trump Airlines, Trump Mortgage, Trump Ice, Trump Magazine, Trump Steaks, GoTrump.com, and, of course, the New Jersey Generals. He's about to be deposed for his involvement in the alleged scam Trump University, where plaintiffs say they were defrauded out of as much as $60,000 on the promise of teaching how to get rich in real estate. Then there's Trump's Taj Mahal, which declared bankruptcy in Atlantic City in 1991 after racking up $3 billion in debt. Trump had to give up half his stake. Trump's Plaza Hotel declared bankruptcy in 1992 after racking up $550 million of debt. He was essentially ousted from management. Trump Hotels and Casinos Resorts declared bankruptcy in 2004 after racking up $1.8 billion in debt. Trump gave up about half of his share in that company. Trump Entertainment Resorts declared bankruptcy in 2009 when it missed a $53 million interest payment. Trump had to resign as chairman. Unfortunately, America can't declare bankruptcy and just fire Trump if he fails as president. But what about Trump's successes? Didn't he make his own way? Well, turns out that Trump's daddy was a New York real estate tycoon who loaned the Donald $1 million to get him started, about $6 million of today's dollars. That wasn't the only loan Trump got from daddy either. Trump later ran his daddy's company. When he started running it in 1974, his share of the company is reported to have been worth about $40 million. In 1982, Forbes estimated Trump was worth $200 million. Today, they say he's worth somewhere between $3 and $4 billion. Proof of his keen business skills. Except, it's actually less than he would have made if he just liquidated all of that, put all the money in the stock market, and hung out at the casino strip clubs instead. Of course, Trump, who absolutely never, ever exaggerates about anything, particularly his successes, he says he's worth $9 billion. But we don't really know because Trump, like President Obama and Hillary Clinton, doesn't like to release his documents. The Donald still hasn't presented his actual tax returns. So, is Trump a big winner, or is he a spoiled brat who grew up in the lap of luxury, had his daddy sign his checks, and then bragged about how he is a huge winner? Trump's three biggest crowds are evangelicals, conservatives, and he's a winner voters. Trump is lying to all of them. Stop buying the lies.
Okay, now, what I am about to say may seem to contradict itself in two ways, but I will explain myself. First off, I don't think Donald Trump can win against Hillary Clinton. If he is to run with the diehard Trump supporters and no one else in the race, he will not win. Okay, Trump supporters really don't make up enough of the voting population to combat Hillary Clinton enough in an election. Okay, that's just kind of the general fact. There are too many people who will stay home, so Trump won't win the election. And by the way, Hillary Clinton, this is the other thing that really agitates me about conservatives, ladies and gentlemen. If you remember, back in 2012, Mitt Romney pretty much obliterated Barack Obama at the debates. I think Romney won 2 out of the 3 debates on policy, and it was really looking like Romney was going to be the winner. Plus, Obama had the Benghazi scandal to deal with. Plus, he had failures with Obamacare. Plus, the GM bailout wasn't going too well either. Mitt Romney should have easily won the 2012 election cycle, folks. However, he didn't. And you want to know why he didn't win the election cycle? It was because over 3 million registered Republicans did not vote. They decided to stay home. They didn't send in their mail-in ballots either. They decided to stay home because Mitt Romney was not their guy. You had the evangelicals telling people that he was too lax on abortion, You had secular conservatives complaining that he was too religious. You had other people saying that because Romney was a Mormon, he would be a bad candidate. And then you have candidates saying, well, screw it. Romney's not my guy anyway, so I'm not going to support him. And folks, what should have been an easy win for Mitt Romney turned out to be a landslide victory for Barack Obama. And it wasn't because Barack Obama ran a particularly good campaign. It was because Republicans are just so bad at coming together and uniting for a common cause that we did not deserve to win the election. Not the way we did it in 2012. When I say we need all boots on the ground, when I talk about how the conservative movement needs soldiers in my columns, I mean it. We need to utilize all the conservative forces out there, because if we don't, Barack Obama is going to win. Hillary Clinton is going to win the presidency, which might as well be Barack Obama's third term. That's why I just said that. And it's just not going to be a good deal for America. Now, if we can all agree to band together behind the candidate, we have more than a good chance of winning. Now, to those who oppose Donald Trump, here is the truth about Trump. I just played that clip of Ben Shapiro saying that Trump is not a conservative, which is true. However, folks, and this is the sad truth of the matter, conservatism may not matter in this race when it comes down to it. Okay? Right now, Ted Cruz seems to have this tactic where he's trying to out-conservative Marco Rubio, and he's trying to out-conservative Donald Trump in the race. And so far, it's not working. He's not going to win simply by trying to out-conservative other people. He needs to get some momentum. He needs to get some likability back behind his campaign. That's how you win elections. And that's how America wins elections. Here's what I will say about Donald Trump. If he is the nominee, if Trump is the nominee, I will vote for him, like I said at the beginning of the program, because I quite honestly cannot see myself allowing Hillary Clinton to become president of the United States. As Leo said, do you really want a cabinet of far-reaching leftists in the presidency? Okay, Zach in the chat room brought up a very good point. Cruz always claims, I'm the only one, which is his problem. He insults everybody else instead of building coalitions. Well, Zach, that's true. Now, the Cruz people would argue that Donald Trump does that, and that Marco Rubio does that. And for the Trump supporters, for the case against Trump, yeah, I could see that. As far as Rubio, as I explained, I think he is the least I think Rubio is the least narcissistic, the least self-centered candidate in this race. I think he has good intentions, but he's never labeled himself as being the only candidate to be able to win the election. So Zach brings up a good point. Ted won't win because he has the I'm the only one who can win mentality. And he's not winning in the polls right now. Donald is winning in the polls. Although, like I said, Rubio is catching up, and in some polls, he's surging right now. So, in essence, because we only have 3 minutes left before the segment ends, here's what a Donald Trump presidency would look like. If Donald Trump were to somehow become the nominee, and we were to elect him as president, honestly, if worst were to come to worst, I believe that Donald Trump would sustain the country for the time being. I don't think things would get any worse under a Trump administration. I don't think things would get any better, but that is the worst. That's the worst case scenario. If Hillary gets the presidency, well, she's going to get the nomination. But if Hillary gets the presidency, she's going to she's going to punch Obama's programs into overdrive. And quite honestly, folks, I don't even want to think about it. It's scary to think of Hillary Clinton as President of the United States, so that's a mental picture I would prefer not to have in my head. Okay, 2 more comments from Zach. Zach, a couple minutes ago, says in the chat room, he says he's the only one who's a conservative, the only one who's opposed to Obamacare, the only one who has the courage, and the only one who has stood up to Obama, etc., etc. Well, exactly. And this is what I'm saying. He and Trump both have a bit of a narcissistic complex to them. Okay, yeah, I'm the only one who can win. Nobody else can win. And people say, and Zach also says, people like Rubio. He gets along with others and doesn't falsely accuse his colleagues like Cruz does. Rubio seems to be the closest to a bipartisan candidate, which I think is what people want in this country, Zach. They want a unifier. They don't want a divider. And, yeah, I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head, my friend. Alright, folks, we're going to take a brief time out for about 5 minutes or so. We'll be back. And for segment number 2, you're listening to The Whitfield Analysis. I'm Sam Whitfield. We'll be right back after this brief intermission.